Hi everyone, I had a couple of questions on Chapter 6, so I thought I'd give you a brief walkthrough on this one as well. I may do this in a couple of different videos. Alright, so the first thing that we want to know is that ABC costing is different than the regular ones that we've been learning thus far. And there's quite a few differences, and I've gone through the slides in pretty good detail, but one of the things I did want to point out is that manufacturing costs as well as some other non-manufacturing costs are assigned to product costs, which is a complete deviation from what we did in previous chapters where we only focused on the manufacturing costs. But here what we're trying to do is get an overview of all of the costs entailed in making, producing, selling a product. So that's the idea there. So what we've learned in previous chapters is that there's one overhead activity, whether it's direct labor hours or machine hours, there's just one cost driver. Whereas in ABC costing, there's 5: unit level, batch level, product, customer level, and organizational level. So I've gone through these, and actually in the notes part of the PowerPoint, I've described an example of each of these, but there's the unit level, the batch level, product level. Don't you love my transitions? Customer activity level, and the final one is organizational sustaining. Meaning, what does that mean? That means that anything that is a general organizational, anything that needs to be kept as a result of having an organization, those are organization sustaining. You can usually think of those things like the CEO and the building, and things that wouldn't change by producing or not producing a product. Okay, so there are different activity pools, and not every single company has exactly the same activity pools, but we're going to use one for a battery company, and they produce a couple different kind of batteries, and they have activity pools called customer orders. So how are their resources used in taking these orders? And so the way that they measure customer orders is how many orders did they take. Okay, another thing they do, because this is a battery company and they manufacture 2 different kinds of batteries, you can think of this like the auto parts store. They'll manufacture the standard one, and then they'll manufacture one that's, like their generic store specific one. So they have design changes because they have to put a different color battery on, or a different label or something like that. So sometimes a new company will come along and say, hey, I want a label that says Hanson's batteries, and so they'll have to go through a design change and design a label just for that company. So the activity measures how many design changes have they made. Okay, and the order size, the number of units is produced. So this is based on machine hours. In other words, the machine hours are determined by how many orders it produces, which kind of makes sense. And then we have customer relations, how many active customers we have, because there's activities and costs that are associated with that. And then this organizational sustaining. We don't monkey with that in ABC costing. Okay, so one thing I want you to notice here is that there's direct material, direct labor, and shipping costs, and these are all very specific costs and don't need to be muddied up with this whole how much overhead do I have, because it's always this gray area that we don't know about, where we're trying to put everything into this overhead bucket. And so the direct material, direct labor, and shipping costs, they don't factor into this because it's very easy to trace which orders, which customers those went to, so you just automatically apportion those things to those specific people. All right, so it's these overhead costs. So then the first stage of allocation is actually figuring out how much goes into each of these buckets. All right, so here we have been provided with all of the manufacturing and non-manufacturing overhead costs. All right, so you can see right away, we know about these. We've been talking about these through the other chapters. These are the production overheads, but now we've got these administrative overheads that we're going to throw in here, a complete change from what we've been talking about before. Okay, so we've got these overhead costs of $22 million. This is a magic number, so remember that.